This talk is about a popular method of teaching. It is called flipping the classroom. Before I get into the details of the talk, in fact, there is a lot I wish to convey. So if you have any questions, please reserve them to the end of this presentation. So our goal as educator is to provide the high quality education. Okay, so let's start the talk with what I will call grumble and groans because we have a lot of complaints about the way classes are conducted. So let's start with instructor's outlook. So I will tell some of my own experiences. Often an instructor spends some time thinking about how to teach the specific concept. He says, should I teach it this way? Should I teach it that way? And maybe he spent a lot of time animating something. So considerable amount of time is spent. And then he comes with the sprint in his leg to share his excitement with the student. But then what does he see out of 100 students? How many do you think are present? 30? 40? Of which 10 are already dozing, others are sleepy eyed, and somehow it just kills the excitement. So that is one of the complaints which many instructors have. So I'm coming more from instructor's perspective. Some aspect of it translate to the student's perspective also. So the reality is we are now having to deal with the very large class sizes, especially the undergraduate level. It has hit 200. There is a lot of difficulty in giving the personalized attention. So especially when you want to have something like a lot of discussion where you pose the question and you want student to give their feedback, you can only target a selected few students. You really cannot involve everyone as a part of discussion, and often there will be a few active students who dominate all the attention. There is another problem that you can't give enough think time for weaker student to solve a subtle problem. Maybe they need 30 minutes or 20 minutes. You can't really pause your lecture as you have to cover certain amount of material in the class. Ultimately, the fact is that we do not give enough time for the weaker student. One thing that I noticed during the discussion, you can't ask so much questions because again, there is a specific time limit and you might plan to convey certain amount of information. Eventually, you can't have a free for all discussion. So these are some of the problems that we face in the large size classes. Another problem is of poor attendance. There is always a mismatch between students' waking hours and class timing. So 8:30 class is like a lot of groans. I mean, it's even I personally can't relate to them because I also hate 8:30 classes when I was student. And what happens often once a lecture or two is skipped, which becomes inevitable for them because they are involved in so many other activities. So catch up is not easy. And once you skip, then that cycle continues. You just tend to skip because you don't know what has happened earlier and you can't follow what's happening right now. So this is again something that happens with the majority of students. So the question that this talk is going to address is how should one conduct the classes so as to facilitate the effective learning, specifically dealing with the large classes as well as the problem of poor attendance. So the solution to the rescue, the flipped classroom, which has been gaining the attraction in recent year. The idea here is basically you flip a traditional classroom. What happens in a traditional classroom is the instructor takes the lecture and then student go to home, do some homework, and then again come back to listen to the lecture on the next day. In a flipped classroom, it is exactly opposite of it. So student they watch the lecture outside the classroom. So these are basically the videos which student watch at their own pace and time. And in the classroom, there is an activity that happens. So this could be solving some practice problem, some discussion, whatever it is. So it has basically flipped. When it comes to executing the flipped classroom, each instructor has their own ideas and how to go about it. So what I'm going to walk through henceforth is I'm going to present a flipped classroom model. So here is the outline of the talk. As an instructor, I had certain objective that needs to be made as a part of this flipped classroom model. So I will state what these objectives are, then I will tell how one can go about implementing these objectives. I will also share what could be the student's outlook in the form of survey. I will also try to share with you some of the insights I had gained as a part of this new teaching model. And then I will talk about some ultimate vision that I have. So that's the outline. Naturally, when you are moving the instruction outside the classroom setting, so whatever you want to teach is now going to happen via video. So the goal is you should mimic in classroom setting or inside classroom setting as much as possible. What happens in classroom settings? There is a lot of discussion, as I mentioned. You ask the question, student respond, you tell something, so that same setting to the extent possible you want to capture in the flipped classroom. So what this translates to is the videos that you want the student to watch have to be very interactive. So for that, you need to embed the question activities as a part of videos. And when someone solves the question, you also need to provide the feedback to the student. So the way students proceed, they watch the video, they pause, they think, they understand, they answer, and then again continues. So that's the way in which the instruction happens. The second objective I had is you have to retain the student focus. So in a traditional classroom setting, if some student is playing Angry Birds on a smartphone, you can just seize his smartphone or you kick him out of the class. Whereas in flipped classroom, there's no control. I mean, I don't know what he is doing. He may be playing, he may be watching some movies, and so on. So you really need to retain the focus of student when he is watching. And for that, naturally, exciting material is the way to go. But it's often not always feasible. The next best thing you could do is to keep the video short and sweet. So research says that anything about 20 minutes, students tend to get distracted. So you need to keep it simple. In fact, many students have requested to keep under 10 minutes, but that's a bit of, I mean, you really can't convey much information. Another objective which I had in mind is to provide the complete learning. In a typical classroom setting, you tell something which can span multiple lectures and then there is an activity, either a demo. So student revise the concept after going back to home through the textbook, and all this happen outside the classroom. But in the context of flipped classroom, to learn a concept properly, it may be that student listen to something and then maybe they do a practice of it. So that will give them a better understanding of that particular concept. So you basically intersperse the video viewing as well as the study time. You move ahead only after mastering a concept, which ultimately results into a complete learning. To achieve these three objectives that I have listed, what it has resulted in is what I call a multimedia book or multimedia textbook that is going to be hosted on a web platform. In a regular textbook, if you see, there are chapters, there are sections, there are review problems, practice problems, so on and so forth. The same idea, except that instead of text, you now have a video. For each subject, you have many concepts that you want to cover, and you package all these concepts as a module. Typically, you try to set the video length less than 20 minutes. If not, you try to split it up and then you neatly organize all these modules with all the supporting material in one place. So that is what forms the multimedia textbook. And this is what you are going to host on a website for the student to reference. So that's outside classroom setting, which mimic inside classroom setting. This side reflects the inside classroom settings in the form of tutorial classes. And my objective here is to provide some kind of personalized attention. If there is a large class size, then it's a good idea to divide it into a smaller group. So each tutorial should contain no more than 30 students or 35 students, ideally even lesser if possible. And then as a part of tutorial, you need to excite or challenge the student. All in one, what you are doing is you are facilitating a group learning or discussion. So the end result of this objective is you can divide the number of students into three groups, and there will be three 1 hour tutorial slot for the three groups. So each group has 1 hour tutorial slot. Since I am managing these three groups, so there are overall three tutorial slot. If you are managing four groups, then there would be four tutorial slot. Now, outside classes are about 3 hours, which consist of video time approximately 1 hour and study time, which is 2 hours. So this is a typical weekly plan that you can follow in running the course. I will discuss the design of tutorial class setting later in the presentation. Now, this is very important. So grading is one of the important aspect of flipped classroom. So to ensure that the students stay on top of the things and they are watching the video, you can conduct the periodic quizzes, okay, which constitutes the weekly tutorial quizzes of 10% weightages. Then you can ask the review quizzes every 3 weeks, which may have 40% of each. And this is how the course is organized. Okay, so you can conduct these periodic quizzes just to ensure student watch the video on time and stay on the top of the things. So the outcome of this model is the PFC learning, which I call personalized learning. So P stands for personalized learning. When a student is watching the video, it is as if the instructor is talking just to him. So they feel special. Hopefully, one very important aspect which is not possible in the traditional classroom setting is all get to answer the question in the video. In a typical traditional setting, I can only ask the question to few students who always dominate the class attention. I can't target everyone, but in flipped classroom model, everyone gets chance to answer the question. So that's something very important. Again, student answer without fear of embarrassment. So in flip mode, there is no such fear of embarrassment. You could go ahead, express whatever thoughts you have, and because we are dealing face to face in small group called tutorial, it also gives a kind of personalized feeling. So that is a personalized learning aspect of it. Then there is a flexible learning aspect of it, which students love the most, as you can relate to student choice of time, place, and group. So they could watch whenever they want, middle of the night, 2 o'clock, whatever it is. So that's the flexibility. And more importantly, from the learning perspective, the student pace. Student can take as much time as they want to solve the problems or example, something like that. In a traditional classroom setting, if I ask a question, I hardly give 1 or 2 minutes to give an answer. But here, you take 10 minutes, you take 20 minutes, doesn't really matter till you understand what's happening. So you can do it at your own pace, and if something is not clear, you can even watch the video multiple times. And of course, this flexibility is offered with the care of periodic quizzes. So you have to design your flipped classroom such that you have to conduct the periodic quizzes. So you really cannot procrastinate watching because you will be quizzed. You move ahead only when you master the concept. Well, this is the outcome of this model. Okay, this is the flipped classroom model, and this model is no magic that will make every problem disappear. It is, in fact, few negatives. One major complaint is that there is no immediate feedback. Basically, doubts are not clear right away. So you are watching the video, and then if you have some question, you really cannot get it clarified right away. Students have to wait for the tutorials to get it clarified. One thing that you can incorporate is you can initiate a discussion forum, something like that, but it's not an instantaneous feedback. This is something which many students may not like. No easy solution for this, but there are three solutions that are feasible. One I would call is an instructor watch. Basically, you specify a designated time during the office hours where you are available. Student assembles in the class and they all watch the video together. And whatever question they have, they can get it instant feedback. Only it needs some kind of discipline. The second solution is as students watch the videos outside the class, they can actually tag the video for some portion of the video which was not clear to them. And as more and more student tag, we can redo the video or provide the explanation at that particular point. Maybe 2 3 years down the lane, the quality of the video itself can be improved to an extent where the confusion or the clarification needed will be quite less. So that's the second solution. Third solution in which what they do is group watching. So 5 or 6 students they can come into group and they can watch the outside videos. So maybe that also leads to a peer-to-peer discussion. So these are some other negatives of the flipped classroom. So flexibility sometimes it kills the discipline. If student watch the video before coming to a tutorial class, then it may like that they will lose the essence of tutorial class settings. Sometimes the flipped classroom, these are the major complaints from the students that the discussion is reduced and interaction with the instructor is also at the minimum level. Sometimes student feels boring to watch the video by themselves. And taking note is very difficult from the student's end. So these are some complaints from the student side. So let's see how we can get the students' insights. So you can ask this some survey questionnaires to the student to explore the student's outlook, what they feel about this flipped classroom model. So you can ask them, do you feel the need of instructor presence? How many inside video quiz that they have attempted and they have solved them seriously? Outside video quizzes really helps them in a overall learning. What is the average time they spent on the videos, including the quizzes within the videos? And you can ask them to rate this flipped classroom model in comparison with the traditional model of teaching. So these few survey questionnaires can help the instructor to get the students insight, to get the students outlook or a standpoint on this new model of teaching. I will now talk about the instructor's insight. So for blended composition of the flipped classroom, a instructor needs to spend a ample amount of time on preparation. So each short videos at least take 2 days of work. This is my experience. So you have to create a slide from the scratch, looking at the copyright issue. You refer the multiple books. You have to create a thought process. You have to record the videos, then edit, and then insert the quizzes inside the videos. So a lot of groans are there from the teacher's perspective as well. So editing a bad video, it requires a lot of time than recording a new video. This is what my experience. So getting the recording right, it needs the practice. The inside classroom discussion is a very important component which needs the careful design. So in this slide, I will more focus on the design of tutorial classes. So in a typical tutorial class, a instructor can spend first 10 to 20 minutes on the quiz and the clarification of the student's doubt. And rest of the time, you should do an activity that excites or challenges the student and leads to a discussion where you can employ the think, pair, share teaching methodology where you can motivate the problem, you can discuss the challenge, and you can leave the solution. You can also conduct a hands-on experiment as a part of your tutorial class if your course do not have the lab component. You could also review the challenging problems. So typically what we use is we follow the Archimedes principle here, right? So what Archimedes principle says, sometimes you feel that you understand some concept, but when you throw the problem, then you realizes that, oh, I do not understood the concept. So you can review some challenging problems to the student. You also employ or use the whisk model into the flipped classroom. So what whisk model says, so student watch the outside video and they create or write the summary based on the video. And inside tutorial classes, the question and discussion happens. So that's the basically WSQ model or whisk model. The only challenge, the major challenge to this tutorial classroom is the unpreparedness of student that can ruin the learning process. If students do not watch the video before coming to the tutorial class, then that kills the excitement of the teacher as well as the student, and everything will mess up. So finally, I guess the question is, should I flip or not to flip? So let me put together again both a quick comparison. Most of the points I have already went through, just flashing it to you. The flexibility, fixed time, focus, whatever all those things. I mean, at times I feel all these cater to the needs of student. From the learning perspective, as far as the flip model is concerned, the fact that you can watch the video multiple times really helps them in a overall learning. I mean, in a traditional classroom, you attend the lecture and not everything goes into your head. Typically, textbook helps you to revise, but in flip, you can watch the video multiple times. This, I think, can help them in learning. So student space as opposed to the instructor space, again, this is something that can significantly help. In flip, you can ask many questions. When you do a traditional teaching, I could hardly fit in 2, 3 questions in classroom. I can't cover or I can't ask many questions. Whereas here in flip classroom, I can ask many questions. In fact, I love to follow the Socrates model where anything you lead, drive up a question. So my each video, which is 20 minutes, can have 10 questions. Another thing that you can observe while comparison, in traditional teaching, when you are asking question, you target only few students in the class. Whereas in flipped classroom model, every student gets to answer the question. So that's another advantage. In a long 1 hour or 1.5 hour lecture, you may lose the focus in the middle. But when you are doing the flipped classroom, if you keep it only 10 to 20 minutes, the 10-20 minutes you can pay a lot of attention. The only downfall of the flipped classroom is the immediate feedback is something missing in the flipped classroom. So in a given class, what I often observe is there is a 10% who are very interested in the subject. There is a 40% marginally interested. 40% will do something to pass, and 10% are least bothered. They are just in the system for whatever maybe their parents ask them to come here. So, who do we cater to? For 10% who are very interested, I think nothing beats the traditional classroom setting for them. I think if you want to cater this 10%, you go for a traditional classroom setting. But a well designed flipped classroom is not bad either. It's not like a major fall. But for the remaining, I personally felt that flipped classroom is better, both from learning as well as exam preparation perspective. So this is my take, and there is no strong basis for this. So we come towards end of this presentation. These are some of resources that I have referred to prepare this presentation. So altogether, what I would like to recommend all the educators that it is up to you that whether to flip the classroom or not to flip the classroom. If you are a teacher who is teaching to a university affiliated institute, I would suggest that better you can flip 1 or 2 units or 1 or 2 chapters. Okay, so there should be a combination of traditional classroom and the flipped classroom. That's it from my end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please write your comments in the comment box. Thank you very much for patiently listening. See you soon in the next video.